Start.
What is going on, y'all? Do we have a name? Oh, Truth and Love. Yeah. The name of our podcast is Truth and Love. I don't know if you knew that or not, but name of our podcast is Truth and Love. Welcome you all to the Truth and Love podcast. Today we are going to talk about kind of just some testimonies of what it looks like, again, practically, applicably for us walking with Jesus every single day and kind of the importance and the value in doing that, and just share some real life things that happen in our lives of those things happening. So do you want to start?
Sure. What do you want to start with?
I thought you were going to start with the story or something.
Oh, okay. I mean, I was just going to say, we recently have met a friend, and her and I talked, and she was not a believer, and she'd never really dabbled in the faith at all. She's heard of it, but that's literally the extent of it. And we're talking, and she's like, man, I really believe what you're saying. I can see it in you. I see the joy and this, that, and the other. And so, she wants to take her faith seriously. So, she comes over, and Cody and I are talking with her. And long story short, come to find out, her dad, I talked to her dad about Jesus years before I even met this girl. And the point of me saying that and wanting to even talk about this today is just think if her dad were to have a poor experience with me at his job where I talked to him at. And then years later, here comes this girl in his daughter's life proclaiming the name of Jesus. And what he remembers is a bad experience from this girl. And, it was one of those things where I was like, man, I'm so glad that's how he's going to know me, is the girl that talked to him about Jesus versus a butthole. Oh, so she's a Christian kind of thing. And for me, I know that there's times specifically when I'm driving, I'm telling myself right now, when I'm driving, I get just that is when the Lord is like, we're going to work on patience today and every other day.
Yeah.
And I just think imagine if I was driving and I'm getting very impatient behind somebody and I have a chance to be able to get over and pass them, and I definitely let them know that they were going too slow for my liking. And then we go to the same store and I bump into this person and they find out that I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
And they're
you're the person who was riding my butt.
So about that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's one of those things. It's not like showing partiality is a good thing, but especially the places that you frequent, for me, I'm that's one of the best litmus tests is the places that you frequent, the restaurants that you're always at, the gym that you always go to, the school or job that you're always at, especially in those places. How do those people know you? If I were to just be like, hey, so-and-so, thoughts on that person? Are they going to be like, oh my gosh, always in a rude mood, always ungrateful, complaining because we're always out of fries, so they're always letting us know how angry they are about it? Is it that kind of person? Or they're like, oh my gosh, that's the person who knows Jesus? And it could be for better or worse in their opinion. But the point is they know you as the guy who knows or girl that knows Jesus and that you're crazy about him. And again, especially at the places that you frequent, because these are people who you have a relationship with. Even if it's some sort of low-key relationship, you have some capacity of relationship with that person. And for you not to be intentional about making sure that Jesus is represented in your life to those people, it's really, really important. Because again, they're making some sort of judgment call on you. Right, wrong, or indifferent, they are. And you need to make sure the judgment call that they're making about you is a good one, and one that is honoring and glorifying Jesus, because they are seeing people every single day of their lives who claim to be Christians. Maybe not to them, but they claim internally at least to be a Christian. And majority of them are probably terrible representations of Jesus, and actually just good reminders as to why they shouldn't become one. And we have a responsibility as a believer to let our light so shine before men so they can see our good works and that they will glorify our Father in heaven because of those good works that they see. And Jesus makes it really clear on how you can. He says in Matthew 7, good trees bear good fruit, bad trees bear bad fruit. You know the kind of tree that it is by the fruit that it bears. And those that don't bear good fruit are going to be burnt down or cut down and burnt up in an unquenchable fire. again, it's really clear. Like when you want to know if an apple tree is an apple or an orange tree, you don't have to take the bark to a science lab and look at it under a microscope or whatever to be able to figure it out. Apples, yes or no? There's your answer. And then, Dan Muller, he goes on to expound on the point and saying, like, if you squeeze an apple, what do you get? Apple juice. You squeeze an orange, what do you get? Orange juice. If you squeeze an apple and got orange juice, you'd be really confused. And you'd spit it out and you'd be like, what's going on here? And he's like, why is it that whenever you squeeze a Christian, you get everything but Christ out of somebody? Like, especially in these times of frustration, irritation, anger, whatever. Like, those times, it should be even more clear because there's more heat put on the fire that we're really, really, really believers. Like, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Like, toss us in. Like, our God will save us from the fire. And even if he doesn't, we're still not going to bow to your God. Like, to have that kind of temperance and that kind of self-control and grace in a moment like that when they're literally about to lose their life, like in that point especially, it's like, man, this is your opportunity to shine. Every day, by the way, is your opportunity to shine, but like, man, in a time like that is especially an opportunity to shine because it's easy to be nice when people are being nice to you, right? Like Jesus says that in the Sermon on the Mount again in Matthew 5. He says, for what profit is it if you are nice to somebody who is nice to you? Don't even the pagans do that? He's like, but no, I tell you to love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. He's like, it's not no benefit of you to do good things for good people, like for people who are doing good to you. Like that's goofy. It's when you're doing good to somebody who's not. That's really where Jesus is, like really, really seen and magnified in a circumstance like that. And I was thinking, there was a guy who came to our house the other day. He was like a door-to-door salesman, and he was trying to sell me something. And we were just talking or whatever. And in the midst of our talking, I had just explained to him, not interested in what he's selling. And he's just in sales mode. So it was very hard. I'm trying to preach the gospel to him. And like, he keeps cutting me off every few like seconds. And, in retrospect, I could have been more stern and just been like, please stop cutting me off and like, let me just talk and then finish what I was saying. But again, he had like zero interest in what I was saying. And then he ended up like leaving and, cause I was not interested and he ended up leaving. But the point that I'm getting at here is to say like, that might be that guy's only opportunity to hear about Jesus again. I mean, because especially in a job like his in door-to-door sales, like people aren't like crying tears of joy to see him come on their front porch. Like people do not like door-to-door salesmen generally. And to see somebody talk about Jesus and be gracious with him, even in the midst of he was being not super nice back, and I was still being gracious to him, like that might be the only opportunity he gets to hear Christ in somebody and see what Christ looks like in a person ever. And this person's welcoming himself into my house, so it's like, you're a goner. Like, you're stuck here to hear what I have to say kind of thing. And, obviously, don't want to go, like, hyper dramatic, but, like, dude, he's driving all day long. Like, his job is driving. He could leave my house and get hit by a bus for all we know. And, like, hopefully he did not. That did not happen. But, I have an ability to, after our conversation, to know that, like, blood is off my hands and making sure that he's heard everything that I could possibly share with him in regards to him hearing the truth of the Word of God. And if you look retrospectively, this is like kind of like the point I want to get at here. Like if you look retrospectively at your life and the things that you have done and said around these people and seen how many opportunities that you have missed. How many times have you been to Chick-fil-A? How many times have you been to Chipotle? How many times have you been to Wendy's and the gym and school? And how many times have you been to all these places as a born-again believer and done nothing with it? And again, I'm not speaking down at anybody. Like I'm speaking to the choir. I've had millions of circumstances like this in my life where I could have, should have, and did not. But man, when you look back, it's like take that as a conviction, it's not condemning. It's not to be like Jesus tapping his foot up in heaven, like shaking his head at you. That's not what I'm saying. But like, man, use that as a way to be like, man, I can look back and be like, I went to Chick-fil-A 3 times today, and like I still didn't do it. You know what I mean? Like, but like, man, I need to be different. I need to be the one who, when I am going there, I am talking to them about Jesus. And all of the excuses in your mind right now as to why you should not, throw them out. I had one of my favorite stories ever. I was at we were at your youth group when she was a youth pastor, and this was before, and I was really hungry, and like the only place that was kind of close that was open on Sunday at this time was a Wendy's. And I do not eat fast food like that ever, but I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry, I need to eat something. So went over to Wendy's, reluctantly went over to Wendy's, and it was cheap. That was my other reason. So I went and I was in the drive-thru, and I had like 3 or 4 cars behind me. And I really just felt like the Lord was like, talk to this guy about Jesus. And I'm at the drive-thru window. Like, have you ever been in the drive-thru window? Like, it's a high pressure, like get in, get out kind of opportunity. And I talked to the guy about Jesus for a while. And I was just like, Lord, if you want me to do this, like, you're going to have to give me the grace to not have the people behind me just like freaking out on me and honking at me. So he did, and I talked to this guy about Jesus, and he was like rocked in tears about my conversation about Jesus just in the drive-thru. Just in the drive-thru. And like looking back, I'm like, man, why don't I steward more circumstances like that? And I'm listening to other testimonies of other people this week and stuff like that, and like, I want to do more stuff like this. But anyways, just all that to say is like, you can make this the time where you say, hey, I'm not going to any longer just let excuses get in the way of me making testimonies happen whenever I'm with people. So anyways.
Yeah. I think also looking back, when let's say you are in the position where you've been stewarding the time and the places that God has allowed you to go, and you're like, yeah, like I feel like I'm very fulfilled with the amount of people that I've talked to. And like, I know that there could be areas that I have to work in, but like, I feel like I've been really intentional about going out of my way to talk to people about Jesus. You can even attest that it is the most fulfilling thing, looking back and being like, wow, like I am so glad that I loved my neighbor more than I loved myself.
Yeah.
And I put all of my needs and my busyness and what I'm doing and me aside to look at the person next to you and realize they need hope. Like they need hope. And if it was you, you would want somebody to do that for you too.
Yeah. Because you have no idea what they're going through. And like the likelihood is that they're going through a lot. And, you know, they're manifesting that a lot that they're going through in generally an ugly way. And it's like, man, those people especially, you know, I should watch this testimony on somebody's page. It's hard for me to even share names of people who I like listen to or whatever, because like if one person listening to this hears that I have listened to a video by so-and-so, immediately like, they'll never listen again, which is so silly. But this person was sharing a testimony, and the testimony was of a guy, and he was driving. He was like I don't know if he was at a grocery store or a restaurant or at a gas station or what, but he sees this person, and he really believes the Lord just laid the word heart on his heart. Laid on him the word heart. And like to talk to this guy about his heart, I guess. And he's like, he fought it, and he's like, I'm not going to do it. So he ended up not doing it. And he was like with a buddy, and they like just kept driving. And he was like so heavily convicted, he turned back around and he went back to the place that he met this guy at, and he bumped into him. He was like, hey man, I just like felt like I was supposed to come talk to you. Like, you know, I followed Jesus. And the guy's like, oh, Jesus, you're going to go with the Jesus stuff. He said this guy then went to spend the next 30, 45 minutes railing on him on all the reasons Jesus doesn't exist, why God's stupid, the whole idea of God. And he's just railing into this guy. And this guy's like, I'm not like super well versed in scripture, so like I couldn't really like argue with him like well. He's like, so I just listened to him for like 30 minutes straight. It's like at the end of the conversation, he's like, he remembered looking at his arm, and he saw this guy's like had like something on his arm, and it reminded him of the word heart. He said, oh yeah, I'm here to talk to him about his heart. So after the guy gets done, he's like, can I ask you a question? The guy's like, yeah. And he's like, do you have like something going on with your heart or something? He's like, what are you talking about? How did you know that? Like, who told you that? And he's like, Jesus just lives in me, and he spoke to me to ask you about your heart. He said the guy just starts bawling and like ends up giving his life to Jesus just because this guy turned around on the highway to talk to him about his heart and get railed for 30 minutes by this guy on all of the reasons that God doesn't exist, and gave his life to Jesus at the end of the conversation. And it's like, to inconvenience yourself for just a short time to see somebody else be able to come to Jesus.
For eternity.
Like the same gift God gave to you, you now get to share with somebody else. Like freely you've received, freely give. And the other thing I want to talk on this point is, you know, I feel like most of the years of my life of being a Christian has been more on the side of just talking to people about Jesus, which is awesome. Like not criticizing or shaming that at all. But I believe the Lord has us now, and we're going to share this in a future podcast. We actually have this big canvas poster. You guys can't see it over here, but it's like 3 feet by 4 feet. It's pretty big. And it shares like the mission of our family. And we're going to like share an overview of all of the 4 like kind of quadrants of it, and then go in depth on what we're going to be doing on each of the 4 individual spots. But one of the things that we're really intentional about this year is like using our home as a place for ministry and growth for people to come to Jesus and whatnot. And one of the things is like one of the things that we're passionate about is to be able to like disciple people and use our home as a place to do that in. And I think that one thing that for me and my wife both, and this is applicable to everybody, but are really intentional in trying to grow in this year is going from just evangelizing to somebody to making a real relationship like point there, touch point, getting their number, and then at that point coming to building a relationship with them from there versus just talking to them about Jesus. For me personally, I know my experience is generally I've given people my number in the past after talking to them about Jesus, and just 99% of them have never chosen to reach out. Again, it is what it is. Like, we talked to this one guy about Jesus at the gym that we go to, and he just never reached out. He had all my contact information. He just never reached out. And I do that intentionally. Personally, I do that intentionally because, like, I don't want to be bugging and begging them, and they're hanging out with me because they feel almost like guilty if they were to not do so. So I've done that intentionally, and I want to still do that intentionally. But I think that, we've been both like praying a lot, and I think this is such a massive portion of this is like praying that God's will be done with this, praying that we're able to meet with people and minister to these people and disciple these people. And it's funny because the past week, I don't know can't speak for her on how much she's prayed about this specific topic. I'm sure she has, but for me is that like I have men who I'm able to disciple. I've had so many men over the past 6, 7, 8 years of my Christian walk where I've been able to disciple them. But like over the past, year or so, it's been much less. It's been much more of like a fellowshipping with other people who I used to disciple. Now I feel like we're pretty much just in the same place and like just helping give them maybe more knowledge. But like I wouldn't consider it as much of a discipleship relationship anymore. And I'm like, Lord, I want more people to be able to disciple. Like, help me get more people to disciple. And so at the beginning of this past week, so Monday, like which was 8 days ago now, 6 days ago now. 7 days ago, sorry. But I was like, man, I need to reach out to like a church to be able to be a part of a small group Bible study kind of thing, men's Bible study they do, to network with some men to start discipling. I'm just praying, and then I call the church, they don't answer, reach out again, and something else happened where like I guess they're just not open. And I'm like, what in the world's happening? Okay, whatever. So I didn't like put a whole lot more thought into it. And then finally, yesterday, my wife is at a restaurant and then meets somebody at the restaurant, and then she ends up connecting me with this person. So now I'm going to be able to start discipling this person. Lord willing, it seems like that's what's going to happen. So anyways, it's one of those things that's like immediately when I start really seriously sitting down, stopping and praying about it, God's immediately like, got you. I got you. You know what I mean? And part of that as well is seasons. I understand that people are in different seasons of life. Like the past 9, 12 months of my life was like the first 12 months of my child's life. And like, so I'm way more on home than I usually would be, way more intentional focus on taking care of baby, taking care of family. So it's just a different dynamic in regards to the season of life. But now that aspect is done, like, I mean, she's still doing great. I'm just saying like that first 12 months of hyper dependency kind of thing where like, she can't like even like, sit on her own without somebody watching her is done. And like now the Lord has graced me with giving me this opportunity again to start, discipling people more in depth, and then not just in evangelism, and then to be a seed planted that somebody else gets to water later. So does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like for me, I have had a pretty decent amount of people lately that I have built relationship with in pursuit of helping them with their walk with Jesus. So I feel like I haven't necessarily prayed for more people. I've just prayed for the people that I am currently pursuing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Do you have any other thoughts or things you want to share, testimonies you want to share or something?
I mean, not right now. I think that, not like anything in depth. I would just say like overall, you don't want to live your life and then at the end of it look back and realize that in the midst of all of your pursuits of the things that you think that you want, those were the times that God was giving you chance after chance and opportunity to grow deeper with him and watch and partake in the body of Christ growing and becoming more united and things like that. And you don't want to look back and be like, wow, I was so blinded by myself and by my own pursuits that I completely blew so many things that I could have done.
Yeah.
I think that it is you cannot look back and regret talking to too many people about Jesus.
Right. Yeah.
There's not a chance that that's going to happen.
Right.
But you can look back and regret the fact that you didn't talk to enough people about Jesus. And there is nothing more rewarding and more fulfilling than being able to see people come to Jesus. And you are blessed in the process because when you're talking about Jesus and you're seeing him move, like you are being blessed just as much as they are being blessed.
Right.
It's growing your faith. It's growing everything, every area of your heart. It's growing deeper into Christ. And I feel like there's just such a blessing in reward and stewarding that time that you have to be able to spread his word.
Yeah. And like actually like proactively create like, I don't want to say like a gospel preaching schedule, but like be intentional about it. Like, don't just like listen to this and be like, great word. Yes, you're right. I should. And then walk away. Like, do something with it. Like, you know, again, for us, like we have this big board that reminds us every single time that we eat food, like, hey, this is what you've said that your calling and your ministry is going to be this year. Do something with that. Like, we can't really get away from it. It's right there. It's massive right there. So in the same way, like do something that holds you accountable. So that you're actually doing these things and it's actually a change in your life, not just another like, oh, great perspective. I'll keep that in mind for the next thing that I'm not going to do. Like actually do something with it and grow and change because Jesus commanded